Commander is one of Magic's most popular formats, and the preferred format for casual play. Even when you lose, you often still have fun being able to play cards and do things you would never see in a normal game. Because it is slow, you have the freedom to build creatively and include cards for the fun of it. This heightened creativity makes Commander ripe for clever custom designs. So how is designing cards for Commander different than designing cards for Standard or Limited, which is mostly what we've talked about so far? The best place to start is to lean into what Commander does differently than other formats. First, and most obvious, we have the commanders themselves. Each commander deck gets one legendary creature that the player always has access to. This legendary creature defines which colors a deck can play and often serves as a build-around, giving your deck a strategy that all your other cards support. Now, when you design a commander, the most important thing is to make the card do something that other legends in that color identity don't care about. This gives players some goal to build around and lets them prioritize unique cards that other decks wouldn't even consider using. For example, Magic has 15 years of history making cards in white, black, and green that care about all of the evergreen keyword mechanics on creatures, but there was never a specific legendary creature that rewarded you for building around these cards. I've always loved these cards, so Cathril from this year's Commander decks was incredibly exciting to me. It asks you to use these cards and creatures that have boatloads of mechanics on them, many of which you wouldn't use anywhere else. It gives you a unique game plan that keeps the format fresh and exciting. In contrast, making a black-red sacrifice commander isn't going to be as exciting because Rakdos already has plenty of sacrifice commanders. Now, each of them works in their own way, but you're still going to include a lot of the same cards, and the decks may not feel very different from each other. This isn't to say that you shouldn't design a black-red sacrifice commander, but if you do, try to give that commander a unique playstyle that asks for the inclusion of different cards than other similar options. For example, Greven wants you to sacrifice a few beefy creatures rather than a lot of tiny ones, which changes the types of creature cards it wants to include in its deck. One good way to find this design space is to look at old mechanics that may not have an appropriate commander. For example, let's look at Energy from Kaladesh block. Now, I know it was much behated for being overpowered in Standard, and I still have trauma from that time everyone at my LGS played Bristling Hydra for a year straight and nothing I could do would beat it. But I do still really like Energy, and I think it's a fun mechanic. And there are no legendary creatures that produce or use energy. So, if I wanted to make an Energy commander deck, I would have to choose a legend that doesn't directly support that strategy. So let's make one. We could either start by choosing colors or brainstorming abilities. And when designing based on a specific mechanic, it's often easier to start with colors because you know which colors that mechanic is based in. Energy is in all 5 colors, but it was focused in green, blue, red. So let's choose those colors to give ourselves the widest variety of cards to play in this deck without going too wide. Now, we could make this card either produce energy or be a payoff for having energy. Technically, we could do both, though it is a good idea to avoid putting both engine and payoff on the same card. It's more fun when people have access to one and have to decide for themselves how they want to use it with other pieces. You know what? I have a decent idea for this ability. Blue-red cares about non-creature spells, and green-red cares about creature spells. So green-blue-red could care about all spells. Let's make it whenever you cast a spell, you get an energy counter. Now, I know this seems unexciting, but bear with me for now as we move on to our next type of design space. Some less obvious design space is the commander tax. Every time you play your commander, it gets more expensive to play the next time. There are several ways that you can use this in design. Commander 2013 introduced a few commanders that have effects based on how much mana you used to cast them. This means that even though your commander's cost is scaling up, its effects are as well. Netherborn Altar lets you bypass commander tax by paying life, which makes this a great inclusion for commanders who can gain lots of life. Finally, you can mitigate the commander tax with legendary creatures that have cost reduction abilities. For example, if you've already cast Ghalta from your command zone this game, it will cost 12 green to cast the second time. But if you have 12 power worth of creatures, you can still reduce the total cost to just green. Let's use this concept to spice up our commander a bit. We can give it a cost reduction ability that lets you pay energy instead of mana. Now, one of the coolest things you can do is make cards that reference your commander or command zone in some way. The Lieutenant mechanic and the new free cycle give you bonuses if you control your commander. Arcane Signet and Command Tower are incredible mana fixing for any color in your commander's identity. And Eminence lets your commander support your game plan even before it hits the battlefield. You know what? Let's use Eminence. What if our commander... I really should have given this guy a name. What if Dave can give us energy even while he's in the command zone? Now, this seems like the sort of tomfoolery that broke energy in the first place, so let's put a cost on there to maintain some semblance of rationality. Now we don't have any reason to want to put Dave into play if his main ability is accessible from the command zone, so let's give him some appealing stats and maybe some combat abilities to make him more threatening. And now we'll give him a high cost to keep you from ramping into him too early. Now that's just the tip of the iceberg, but I've talked enough for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments about your favorite commander. We'll be back next Thursday.